Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and already we've had a little pregame, and so excited to hear from this gentleman. He is majorly successful in his own right. He's created something called the Intentional Growth Model, and it's a business, it's a podcast, it's a lot of different things. So go check him out on this. His name's Ryan Tansom out of Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the snow. I know you're sitting in the warmth.
Dude. Mesa, Arizona, you think it's warm. I think it's cold. I'm in a hoodie and sweatpants with thick socks and it's
75 degrees.
And a heater underneath me because if it's less than 70, it's cold. And my wife is like, oh my gosh, it needs to cool down. I'm like, no, it's cold. So, but anyways, we get back to Ryan, not me. So Ryan, he built with his family, this family business, ultimately sold it for 8 figures, multiple 8 figures. Or his family did, I guess. I don't know how much of that he got. Maybe he'll disclose, maybe he won't. But that's not the point. The point is, when you're part of that and around that, you learn a lot of things. And you learn how to build culture, how to analyze a business and determine what it's actually worth. How do you change the things that make your business worth more and ignore the stuff that's not maybe ignore, but not give as much attention to the stuff that's not going to add value. And this is not just in business. What we're going to talk about, I'm going to make him talk about it. He doesn't know. But we're going to talk about how these principles, because principles span all areas of your life. So whether it's faith, or whether it's your family, or whether it's your relationships, or whether it's yard work, or whatever it is, how do you use principles of success that you can deduce and say, hey, look, I want to emphasize and get better at one thing and increase the value in my life in one area, and the area that's not adding value, fulfillment, joy into my life, let's just not focus on it. It's not that we don't need it, not that we don't. For me, that's food. I don't focus on food because I don't enjoy eating. It's not my thing that I enjoy. So food is just a thing. Some people, that's their life. They would die without good food, right? That's fine. It doesn't matter. But because I know that's not an area that I really get jazzed up about, then I don't invest a lot of time. I eat healthy. I get pre-made meals, so I don't have to think about it. Do they taste great? No, but they feed my body what it needs. And then I move on with my life. I much prefer talking about business. So I'll invest lots of time into podcasts and different things because that's what I enjoy. So these principles that we're going to talk about, I'm absolutely stoked to hear from Ryan, but he's going to tell us his story, how he got into this family business, how they got into it, and what's it been like since then, and why has he now decided, hey, how do we help other people grow? How do we help other people accomplish greatness? So go for it, Ryan. I'm so excited.
With this kind of timing, Sam, I don't know when this is going to be released, but we're sitting here, it's towards the end of November, and like, what is everybody planning on doing next year? And that's why I want to kind of just tee it up with, like, people, I go, what's your goal? Like, 10 million in revenue, 100 million in revenue, $1 million. I'm like, so what? I had a $20 million business that was losing money and worth nothing. So this is about putting the right goals in place so that way you can actually have the options to create the legacy that you want. Like you're talking about, you need a business that is a vehicle through the cash flow, through the infrastructure, the platform to actually make the impact that you want. And there's 3 kind of components of intentional growth. And I'm going to go all the way back and then I'll start the stories. I truly believe that every entrepreneur, and honestly, I think, Sam, every individual, we did the story brand framework, that book multiple years ago with our company, and every entrepreneur or business owner wants 3 things. And it's like, think about it like this Venn diagram where they all kind of intersect together in the middle, and it's create wealth, enjoy work, and make an impact. And in the middle is intentional growth. And the reason behind this, Sam, is, after 300 and some episodes of my podcast, I've had people that are worth $1 billion on my show. And after they sell their company, they have this pie chart of their Charles Schwab account and they have no one that needs them, and they're upset and sad. So I'm totally in line and speaking the same language, bro. And like, the thing is like, if you could be making a lot of money, having a lot of fun, And at some point, you're going to wake up and go, what's us all for? You could be making a huge impact and also having a lot of fun. At some point, you're going to go, I need to make this worth it for myself financially. So it's kind of like keeping those in the middle and say, I want to enjoy the journey along the way. So I did not know all this. I've learned this the hard way about trying to, stay in the middle of that and those circles. And it all started, Sam, when, I grew up in Minnesota here. My dad started our family business in the early 90s. And, similar to you, you talk about food, and I'm wearing this t-shirt. I've got gray shirts and black shirts. That's it, man. I eat the same shit every day I have for like 10 years. And the thing is like, it's because I really enjoy business. And I think business is a huge way to make an impact and have a lot of fun. It's really my sport. And it became my sport back as a kid because I watched my dad. He barely graduated high school, went to like 90 days of college. And he was slinging credit card machines, and then calling cards. And like he decided to start selling copiers back in the early 90s. And he decided after we traveled, or actually got transferred to Arizona, came back in Minnesota, and he mortgaged our house and bought $250,000 worth of old Panasonic copiers. And like one employee found out that the inventory was pretty much junk. He had 30 days to sell it or whatever it was. And so I say all this because with my dad's upbringing, and he was not a good student, and I had a lot of energy and ADHD or whatever the different things are that make, traditional rote memory difficult for me. And what happened was he's like, hey, if you are nice to people and can sell stuff and provide value to the world, you'll always be fine. And that's just like the mantra that just got beat into my head, Sam, because like it was his way, I think, of telling me what worked for him and kind of like getting over his own imposter syndrome. Like, hey, like, doesn't matter about schooling. You just go out there and provide value. And so like when I was a kid, man, like it started with like the lawn mowing hustle. So I had a lawn mowing company. Like I remember I bought this like MP3 player, dude, that was like $590 when I was like 12, and it could hold 17 songs. And like you're doing the Napster thing and all that stuff, because I liked being able to, I do something, I get rewarded for it, and then I can go do this and buy this myself, regardless of whether my mom and dad said so. So it was like kind of that I really truly saw that the financial freedom truly bought my own freedom, but it came with hard work. And it got me excited to, on like every night, dude, like my dad would come home. He worked 12 hours to 15 hours a day forever. But like I stayed home, and I got to, like, as the oldest child, I got to hear the play-by-play of what happened every single night at 9:00. Like when he got the Canon licensing and when he opened up the branch or when this happened. So like, I just loved it. And so I started working in the business throughout so going back, the copiers didn't used to be plugged into the internet. Yeah, I know you and I might not like remember that, but like truly they had like these odometers that like the technicians would go in and fix stuff with their hands, and like, they'd be all greasy and stuff. And these odometers, I'd have to call people and be like, hey, how many prints did you do this last month? So I'm calling people. They hate the fact that I'm calling them and interrupting them. And then I get the number from them so I can bill them. So of course no one wants to pick up the phone call. So like, I was cutting my teeth and just random stuff like that, Sam, in the business. And then like I sold Cutco, and then I sold water units. And so like, it was just kind of this whole, like, I really at a very early age knew that like, it really didn't matter what job I had, as long as I could build relationships, provide value, and hold true to my word, I'll be fine. So like, it's kind of like a lot of entrepreneurs have that similar experience. And that's where like the control and my desire to have a control over my destiny really started, I think. And then I kept watching my dad build his machine, and we scaled up. We had about 115 employees, 21 million in revenue, 3 locations. And then I'll take a pause for a second, because I'm kind of getting up to the point where I worked in and out of it throughout college. He had a bunch of personal stuff that he started going through right when I went to college. And then I graduated in 2009, where my college, I used to, which we can talk about. I was not a good student, man. Like it was like get stuff done so I can get my 3.0 so I can just move on with life. So I was there to hang out with friends, go to the bar, and build as many friends as possible. And So I had all these internships and stuff like that. And then I graduated in 09 and all my super smart buddies had no job offerings. And the sales guy that's willing to work for $1,000 a month had like 15. It's just like, yeah, it looks like it benefits to be a salesperson, and it was just a weird validation to me that like, no matter how hard you try and plan for something, the external world might slap you in the face. And like, again, all my one of my really good buddies, accounting degree, another good buddy, architecture. He was went to school for an architect, and he graduated in 09. It's like, well, construction, just not a good choice. But not a good timing. So my point is, it kind of all this stuff led up to like really having control over like what's the vision, how do we work hard to get to that vision.
Yeah. So that's it. Am I ready to start interviewing you now? I'm so excited.
I got to like where I'm at, like I get, because I don't usually normally do that kind of like the younger age story that I just gave, but we're kind of getting to the point where when I started the family business and we lost $950,000 in 2009, so we can talk about that going forward. But
yeah, let's hear it. I want to hear it.
I was gonna say, if you do any questions, I don't want to keep
I'm gonna give you a litany of questions, but I want your story in a complete package.
Okay, so was not gonna go work for my dad because him and I we are both very strong personalities, and I'm now what I call professionally unemployable. So like, I'm happy to help people, happy to be an entrepreneur, but like I don't take direction very well. So I wasn't going to go work for him. And then I was actually going to take a job at doing health benefits sales. And his GM at that time convinced me to come. We're not selling copies anymore. It's solutions. I actually can't even say it without laughing anymore. It's freaking managed print services and document management. And because I didn't want to sell commodities, I like big complex problems. Lo and behold, I start working for him. So I get convinced in to come work for him for like $40,000 base pay or some crap like that. And as an owner's son, you have two choices, man. Work twice as hard as everybody else to maybe be treated like everybody else, or two, be the entitled prick everybody thinks you're going to be. I mean, there's no in between. So it was show up at 6 a.m, leave at 8 p.m, make more phone calls, sell more stuff. And like, that was it. And with sales, it's nice. If there's one benefit is, and as a salesperson, it's very visible whether you're succeeding or not. And no one can help you in sales. So it's like, you just go get the teeth kicked out of you every single day. So that helped with like kind of the spirit of everybody understanding, like, I'm not just here to just ride the wave. But then it really got real, man, because I got pulled into the bank meetings and the CPA meetings in 09 right off the bat. I'm 22 and we lost $950,000 that year. My dad had been very distant from the company for probably about 5 years or so. And the GM was running it. He was not a right fit. Let's just put it that way. So at that point, man, I went from this blissful, like, hey, I'm just going to sell and just crush this. My dad had been very distant to like, we got to fix this thing to save our family legacy in our business. Like, we have no choice. There is no oh, we can fold shop, but like, no thanks. We got personal guarantees. Like, I mean, we got a lot of work to do over the next 5.5 years, Sam. I'm going to kind of sum it up pretty fast, where then I built out the document management offering. I helped to replace. So I probably fired 50 some people by the time I was 25, sold a couple branches for cash, built out the managed IT services, rebranded so we could go, we're essentially with a B2B technology provider we needed to be. And at that point I was the executive vice president, pretty much running the executive team. My dad we kind of had this dotted line where we were still doing the bank and the CPA meetings. And it was hard as hell, man. There's 4 days of stories in the turnaround, honestly. And we did it like, we got to this point where my dad and I constantly had this, like, couldn't get this answer of, like, he's like, he just didn't like the business anymore. I mean, so many entrepreneurs are calling me every day, like, I want out. No one says I want out of my, like, I always say, out of what? Your asset or the job. And they kind of look at me. I'm like, dude, it's two separate things. You have a W-2 paycheck that you get for doing stuff in the company. And then you have an equity in this asset that has cash flow. No one calls me up, Sam, and says, I want out of my $1 million in distributions. It's really tough. They call me up and they say, I want out. And it's usually, I'm burnt out, employees suck, supply chain inflation, blah, 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 blah. They're tired because it's exhausting. So I say that now. I did not have this kind of vernacular, Sam. So my dad and I didn't know that. So when he said, I want out, and this, conversation happened over and over and over again for a year or two, finally it's just like, I don't know. We talked to our CPA, talked to our attorney, talked to our banker, talked to Vistage, and we were both in Vistage, talked to all these people, and it's like, oh, that sounds like an awesome strategy for taxes. What the hell does that have to do with us? I don't know. Let's go sell more stuff. Revenue, gross profit, checking account. Revenue, gross profit, checking account. We're running a $20 million business like that, which most people do. And we just got so fatigued of trying to figure out how to get us out. Like, where my dad, I wanted to keep reinvesting to build out the managed IT services. And then he wanted to keep taking bigger distributions and not talk about copiers or the industry. So like, if you think about it, we had this major, like, now I can articulate it well. One stream of cash flow, I wanted to reinvest. He wanted to pull it out. We weren't aligned at the very top. So there was this constant back and forth. And what ended up happening is we ended up pinning up a couple local competitors against each other, because he feels like, finally, I want out, Ryan. I'm like, I get it. Like, I've tried. This is my baby kind of now, because I've helped kind of build the people and the culture and the services, and it would truly kind of become, my identity. And then I'm like, I don't know how to put this thing together in a way that makes sense for both of us either. After talking to all these people, so we sold it after pinning up some people against each other. And the nature of the deal was, because we didn't know all the stuff I now teach, is we maximized purchase price. That's all we thought about. Retirement, essentially. So we sign the purchase agreement for the person that paid the highest price. However, what that came with was the redundancies. So I had to, the day we signed the purchase agreement, July 1st, 2024 or 2014, I then had to call like 90 people into the office. There's like, I don't know, 15, 20 technicians in the field in the cars, 15, 20 sales reps, all company meeting that's not planned. I still get a stomach ache thinking about it. Tell them, everybody, we sold to a local competitor. Everybody looks at us like we've betrayed them. Tansims are now multi-millionaires. No one knows how valuations work. They don't understand net proceeds, all this shit. I'm like, so it was like, I just let everybody down. They only, the buyer, and this is not their fault at all. The buyer only had, I think they only took 33 out of the 90 employees or something like that. So like 2/3 of my employees get fired. Everybody thinks that we got these, like this $40 million sale, and then just left everybody hanging. Dude just crushed me. Went home. I actually cried. I was sitting there with my wife. I'm like, 4 years of this. And like, I just like, what the hell? And I was actually, I eliminated myself as part of the deal. They ended up hiring me as a salesperson, but I'm sitting in a cube next to an intern after running a $20 million business. I'm like, this sucks. So much part of it, Sam, but that's really where like the major, and there's a bunch of steps between then and now, but like, that's where my why of like, it's not just about the money. It is about the money. You got to be financially free. You got to understand how valuations work. And I talk a lot about that, but like Bo Burlingham has a book called Finish Big, How Great Entrepreneurs Exit Their Company on Top. And he talks about that 75% of owners are unhappy regardless of how much money they made. And I talked about that Charles Schwab, pretty nice, beautiful pie chart with no one that loves you. It doesn't matter. So like I got to this point where then I was like, how do I help people think about their business as an asset so they can grow the asset, understand how their job works, so they can actually intentionally grow the value of that company to create the choices of whatever they want to do. Focus on that asset. But if you want to do an ESOP, family transition, whatever it is, your first principle of the 5 intentional growth principles, the first principle is your vision. What do you want for your stakeholders, your legacy, your community, your role, everybody? Figure that out first. And principle 2 is your financial targets. Then, because again, you can want everything but not afford it. So you get like, there's kind of like two sides of the same coin. Sure. Then you can be way more intentional of like, what is that long-term plan? So I'm kind of hopefully leading this up. I'm talking a lot. You're doing a very good job listening. But like trying to like, hopefully that there's the background of the childhood, but then the turnaround where it's like, that's the true why, man. It's like, I want everybody that owns a company to get rewarded for their hard work financially and emotionally. And you have to think about this stuff the right way instead of just looking up one day and going, I want out, and like hoping everything is going to align. It's just kind of ridiculous how many people just hope.
Right. Yeah. And that again, I knew this is where this is going. I didn't know what your story, right? But I know the story. This is a thing about business and why Ryan can now come into whatever you're doing, whether it's you want more intention in your family, wealth, enjoyment, and impact, whether it's you want to be better at anything, religion, faith, it's all the same story, right? The story arc is the same story arc.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to know Ryan's specific story, although I invited him on here to share his specific story, but I know the story arc. And if we can't get more people hearing the story arc from a bunch of different people, I've had some major epiphanies for myself in the last 2-3 weeks that I've been being told for the last 7 years. I know I've been being told it because they've been telling me it, and I could go back to the recordings of where I was in the room and they told it to me. But nothing clicked until 3 weeks ago. And my whole entire life has changed. My wife, we were in the car and I've just like been over grateful. I say over grateful, but like even more gratitude recently. And, I tell my wife, oh, I'm so grateful for you. I love you. And she's like, finally yesterday, she's like, Sam, why do you keep saying that? I was like, well, do you not want me to be grateful for you? I'm grateful for you.
Because it's true?
Yeah, exactly, because it's true. And she's like, I feel like it's more though right now. Like you've been saying it more. I'm like, you're right, because I've been experiencing it more. Right? I say it as often as I experience it. It just happens to be that every time I see you, I now see how grateful I am for you. Where that sucks. Before I only saw it 2 or 3 times a day. Now I see it all the time every day. Like, so it's like, doesn't it suck that before I wasn't saying it more? That I wasn't expressing my gratitude, that I get to talk to Ryan today about his story and meet somebody from Minnesota, right?
You even said Minnesota right. I love it.
I was going to say, probably butchered that accent.
No, you did it. You did it.
But like, I hope Ryan and I are best friends now. We are best friends because anytime I see him, he's my best friend. Whether he thinks he is or not, he's my best friend, right? So how you feel about yourself ultimately changes how you feel about others. And the key to Ryan's story, we're going to go dig into like a ton of this stuff of similarities, because I'm going to share my story, a little bit of the similarities alongside Ryan, so that you, the listener, are sitting there thinking, well, what are my similarities? Where are my touch points? Because everybody has the same touch points. They're not all the same exact things. They're not all the same timing in their life, but everybody experiences the same touch point on their way to success. Some of you listening, you might be in the beginning. That's why I wanted him to start in the beginning. That's why I start my story in the beginning, because I don't know where you're at on your journey. I assume you're old enough to understand what we're saying. So you're at least 5 or 6 years old, right? Past that, I don't know where you're at. And some of you, unfortunately, have been molested or had some deep trauma in your life. And mentally, you're stuck at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old in a lot of ways, because that's where you're at. The deeper the trauma, the more you get locked in this lockstep of childhood. Even though you're 30, 40, 50 years old, you haven't graduated emotionally past that. And that's not an indictment on you. It's an invitation to listen a little bit closer as we go through this, because changing that for him, he went through this crap with almost losing a company, like losing $900,000 nobody enjoys, and then digging yourself out of that, only to find that you're at odds with your dad or the other people in the company. So you think, okay, let's do something that's good for both of us, or we think it's good for everybody. We think it's going to serve the need of eliminating the job, only to find out that you weren't aware enough and nobody coached you through it, that you just screwed over all of your friends and all of your family and everybody else that, like, I mean, 2/3, that's a pretty big screwing, right? And the 1/3 that's did get to keep their job, they're probably not happy working there, because they're maybe grateful that they got to keep their job, but they're also feeling the same pain of feeling the guilt that they got to keep their job and 2 of their friends didn't. It's like this, it's just a mind screwing of everything. And so that's why Ryan is passionate about being intentional and growing whatever you're growing with intention, so that you don't have to experience that at the end. You don't want to get to where you're 30, 40, 50 years old, your kids move out, your grandkids don't come around because you never built meaningful relationships. You just made sure they survived.
Well, and Sam, what's really interesting is that book Bo Burlingham wrote, Finish Big, that I read after I sold. One of the big problems are when you talk about where you're at in your head, whether there's trauma that happened. I mean, most entrepreneurs that are founders, I'm not talking private equity investment or private equity or venture capital or anything like that, but at founders who have an idea, have a skill set, wanted freedom or legacy, whatever the reason they started the company for, it's so wrapped up into their identity of why they started their company. So my dad actually went through some trauma in his early childhood where he actually ended up dealing with it while I was in college, which is why he was very distant from the company. And when he dealt with it, he didn't like the business anymore. So what happens is, and I see this every day, dude, and you name them.
So what's funny is I didn't even know that that's what he went through, but I knew that that's what he went through.
No, because like
everybody goes through.
Well, and whatever it is, there's, you weren't good at school and some teacher said something to you or whatever it is, then it's like, this is why I'm going to start a business. Or, and again, whether it was conscious or or subconscious, at the end of the day, the crazy part is like, you have this asset and it's truly a financial asset with cash flow, right? And just like you would think about real estate as an asset, but people don't get like emotionally caught up in a real estate portfolio unless it's their own house. People get delusional about what their own house is because their grandpa built the mantle and I don't give a shit, honestly. Like, but like there is some emotion, but like, real estate as an investment is just an investment. But when you have your identity wrapped up into your investment at the same time, along with your job, it's like who you hire is a reflection of you. The suppliers you choose are a reflection of you. The bank that you choose is a reflection of you. How in your ideas and how you rolled out your ERP system is a reflection of you. How you treat your community and your charities is a reflection of you. But it's also an asset. So it's like this mind-numbing, like swirling of things. So the goal that I want is to separate all these concepts. So just because you can separate these concepts doesn't mean that you don't treat your business well or you don't appropriately handle your role, but it's just about being able to communicate with it in those containers of like, I'm talking about my job right now, or I'm talking about my asset. And you're like, you can intentionally weave those together if that's your desire, but at least gives you kind of some framework to think about it.
Yeah. So what's interesting, and this is one of the big epiphanies that I had just because in my current career, my goal and my desire is to build branches of people doing what I'm doing, helping families reach their dreams and their goals. And for the longest time, I was just trying to like do it and have people watch me and follow them. And the biggest epiphany that I just had literally 3 weeks ago is the idea that this separation that you're talking about, the identity being in your business and you not recognizing the separation. Sometimes like what I hear you saying is I know some people who are like hearing what you're saying and they're saying, well, I don't want to separate my identity from my business. I like it. Okay. But what they don't recognize is that we're talking about two levels of identity here. Okay. So brand identity is super important. And I actually think infusing your identity into your brand or into your asset is really helpful and can get you excited about it. The thing that sometimes people think is that it swaps. So rather than understanding that your identity is first and foremost and at the top, and then you're placing your identity into your business, they actually flip upside down. And now your business becomes your identity because you've built it there and you were unconsciously building it there. So now leaving it feels like you're leaving your identity. When you have this switch, and this is a switch I had 3 weeks ago, literally was, oh, my business isn't necessarily my identity as much as I get to go place my identity, a portion of my identity. I got to go, like, I just think of like a genie or somebody like touching something and it just becoming more beautiful. It doesn't change its state. A couch is still a couch. But when a couch has Samuel's fabric on it, it now is a Samuel's couch. A canvas, a painter, it's a blank canvas. It's still a canvas and it's still the same paint. But when Da Vinci touches it, it's a Da Vinci painting, and that's his identity is part of that, but he's not the Mona Lisa, right? There's difference there. So he can go and touch with his magic or his identity as many paintings as he chooses. You can now bring your identity, the beautiful part of your soul and everything that God created you to be, and you can go touch all these individual lives and spread your identity through touching them and letting them flourish in their own asset, right? Rather than flipping it and saying the asset is my identity.
Well, and Sam, you know what happened? And the conundrum that people get into is that, so it's not binary at all. So like when people say, because I mean, if you truly wanted to focus on just growing the value of that asset, people would say like, don't be highly involved, get your name out of it. However, This is myopic thinking, in my opinion. So people think about it in binary. And this is what my dad and I thought 10 years ago. In order to get out, because I didn't know the difference between a job and an asset, get out was sell to a third party like we did, gut the company, and then get paid for it, and your job and your asset go at the same time. That's one option. Or then the other option of the 0 and 1 binary situation is internal transfer, seller finance note, drama, painful, takes forever to get my money, huge risk. That's what people think about. Sure, those are both options. There's a shitload in between, man. Like, honestly, like, just to throw it out, because I just got done wrapping up an ESOP mini-series. I don't know if people are familiar with employee stock ownership plans, but if you focus on growing the value of your company by sustainable, predictable, transferable cash flow, so you create sustainable, predictable, transferable cash flow, increases your multiple, you can intrinsically grow the financial value of your company without having to sell it. You can measure and monitor this stuff. We do it all the time. Private equity firms do it. ESOPs do it, all that stuff. But if you have a business and you say, okay, I'm going to grow the cash flow, de-risk it, and I'm going to have an equity valuation target at a point in time. So if it's $10 million equity valuation in 2030, what is the income you want along the way through salaries and distributions and taxes? Like, that's my target. You can get to 2030 if you, let's say, for example, you had $2 million in EBITDA and times it by 5 is $10 million. Revenue, you got no debt. So that's the equity value. You don't have to have just those two options, dude. You can do an ESOP, or you can sell your company to an ESOP trust, get half your money up front, get a seller's note for the other half, and you have complete control over the entire damn thing. So if you truly wanted legacy, you wanted to control the legacy, the direction, the future strategies, and the entire situation now and going forward, you could monetize your asset and still be the CEO till you drop dead in the corner. People don't know that's an option. And by the way, once you become an ESOP, you don't pay any taxes. So that's also pretty sweet. Like, my point is, if you focus on growing value and you understand what you want from your role, your legacy, and how the financials work, you can line those things up, man. And there's no reason you can't pre-engineer exactly what you want as an outcome.
Yeah. And it comes down to the pre-engineering, knowing the right people, right? And being able to know the right people, get the right information, and apply the right information. You can know the right people, but never ask them the right questions, or never pay for their information, right? Some people think, oh, I don't want to pay because they're my friend. It's like, no, why would you ever want to steal from your friend? Like, what the hell?
That's it. I like it.
Pay your friend. I was telling this, I was just talking to my team the other day, yesterday, I think, because we were talking about finances and the mindset of money. And I was like, look, when I called my brother and asked him for his expertise on my electrical in my house, I consulted a professional. And then I Venmoed him money because I valued his information. And you could be like, well, you just, like, it was a 5-minute phone call. Yeah, well, that 5-minute phone call saved me a lot of stress. So it was worth the money, right? I could have called him, or I could have called the Joe down the street and the guy would have sent me an invoice. So why not call the guy? Like, why not spend that money?
Get the right information.
Who cares what city or state he's in, right? I can consult somebody on FaceTime now and spend, like, why my brother does this. I can just call my brother and then pay my brother for his expertise, right? I don't just like suck off of him. I'd say, look, here's the thing. So think about this. Like, why would you want to stiff the people that you care about and love the most? It doesn't make sense. Okay, so now we're going to go back because we're running out of time, but I have to get answers to some of these questions. Okay, so there's too much here.
I'm all yours, man.
I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna hit on some of these things. When he asked at the beginning, what are your goals for the next year? Okay, it's February, it's getting to end, right? This is so common in entrepreneur land, but also just common in life. People set New Year's resolutions. Guys, every day is a new year. If you have goals for the next year, why are you not crushing those today and tomorrow? Like, what's your goal for one of the biggest blessings that I have in my life is I work with it in an industry that we track our rolling, like our rolling 12 income. So every day is like, oh man, I got a chance to hit a new high of my rolling 12. It's not calendar to calendar year. It's rolling 12. So every month is like, hey, I got to hit a new goal every month. Every day is important. And so just think about that. If you're still setting New Year's resolutions, I would just consider, what if you started setting daily resolutions? Like, hey, what can I accomplish today and tomorrow? And So what do I want my life to look like in 12 months from now and in 3 years from now? But that's a rolling number, right? It's not like, oh, well, I accomplished it December 31st. So great. Now I have to set a whole new thing for next 31st.
Thing with like dieting, man. Like, so you just, when you're done dieting, you're just going to go back to eating McDonald's?
Maybe.
I mean, just like 5% of the time. But again, it's like, to your point, it's like the whole thing, it's not just a point in time. Like, you're just relentlessly executing over time, getting towards your long-term goals.
Right. And that's the other thing. So there's something that's called decision fatigue. And he mentioned, hey, I've got black and gray shirts. I went to a bunch of different barbers to try and find one who will cut my hair in the same way every time. Right? Because I do my hair the same way every time. The only thing that's changing now is I'm losing it. So now I'm like, okay, I've got to adjust with like losing hair. And then I'm going to shave the dang thing, because then that'll save me 15 minutes a day, right? Like, why spend time doing hair, washing hair, all that stuff that you don't need to do, right? So decision fatigue is huge. I do it with my hair. So I do my hair the same way every time. I get it cut so that I can go 6 weeks without a cut and do it the same way, and it looks great all the time.
So just to even like slightly modify the decision fatigue, Sam, I think most people spend an insane amount of mental calories and anxiety and stress trying to figure out whether they're actually headed in the right direction and what they're doing is even getting them closer to their goals. But because 2% of people write down their goals and only like 15% of people have goals, people are always wondering, am I doing the right things, but have no goal to calibrate the decision.
Right.
So exactly. Like when you have that goal, then you just know I just wake up and have to execute. So you don't have to think about, am I doing the right thing? So it actually increases, like you said, you have less decisions to make. You're just going towards that direction.
Right. And if something's out of alignment, so this is where I help people. Like I tell people when I'm working with them, I'm like, look, you can budget your time, you can budget your money, you can budget your relationships, you can budget your efforts, all of that, and then set a goal. And I don't believe there's right and wrong. And some people are like, well, what do you mean you don't believe there's right and wrong? Well, because something that's right for one person might be wrong for another. So right and wrong is a subjective term to begin with. I don't think there's an ultimate overlaying right and wrong, right? Satan thinks he's right. God thinks he's right. So guess what? Who's right? Well, it depends on what outcome you want. I don't know. So it's like, I know what's right and wrong for me, but to say that, but the only reason I know that is because I have a stated objective. And so now I can start saying, hey, this serves me, this doesn't. So that's the other thing. So decision fatigue, I've done it in my food, my socks, my clothes, my shoes, my hair, like everything works together so that I don't have to think about it. So that's huge. The other thing is if these, I promise you, these are the biggest assets you can have in your life. Be nice to people, not just nice, like backhanded, passive aggressive nice, but genuinely be grateful that you got to see another human and love them. Like genuinely. I'm gonna use your word sell, but I'm gonna ask you to clarify that because I think this is important. And then provide value. And this is what matters most. If you can be genuine to people and provide value to people, and you can say sell, and I'm gonna have you clarify that, then you don't have any other worries in the world. Money's no longer a worry because you know that you can make money doing whatever, right? It doesn't matter if he's selling copiers, if he's selling Coco, if he's selling mowing lawns. It doesn't matter what Ryan is going to go and help provide a solution to somebody. He's going to be good at it because he's learned how to communicate and negotiate. So I want you to define when you say sell, what does the word sell mean? Like if I say, hey, you're good at selling, what does that mean to you? How would you define that action?
So to use your story arc that you're talking about, so there's a hero, the person that's listening to this, we're all our own hero, right? There's something that you want. I don't know what it is. You have a problem in front of you and you want something. I don't care what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Like you could give me I've been in sales so long now, Sam, like you name what, I don't care what it is. Someone has a problem and they're looking for a solution to overcome that problem. And if I'm sitting in front of someone and what I'm doing, product or service, is going to help that person make progress towards their goals, I need to communicate how I can help them get to their goals. That's it, man. So that's like selling is more of just communicating how I can help them get to their goals. Therefore, you need to listen to understand what are their goals. And then you actually need to understand your product or service and not talk features and benefits, but talk about how they're going to get to their goals. Dude, it's not that complicated, but I don't know if there's anything else even to say.
No, I agree with you, but thank you, because that's the truth. It starts as people have a problem, and I try to not be called. I think I separated it in my mind, I guess, because of the negative connotation of sales. Like, okay, if you're a salesman, you're probably thinking about yourself and you're motivated by your own
transaction of commission.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So like if you're just out there selling, then there's people, and I think this is where the negative connotation comes in. That's where I wanted you to define it, because if we're both using that definition, I'm happy to be a great salesman, right? But I'm actually proud
of me. I'm a visionary, and I'm helping people. I mean, that's the whole point of my business, is I truly want to teach people. Like, I have 3 revenue sources, and we don't have to get into it, but like I always say that there are 3 different ways that I can help people. One is I teach them how to fish. So if you don't want me to help you fish, I'm going to teach you how to fish. That's our training program. The second one is, if you wanted to actually go fish, then we have an offering that can help people understand what to pack, where to go, how to do it, but they're taking responsibility for themselves. So it's like, it's more than just training. It's like more like, yeah, okay, we can help you get there, but we're not taking responsibility over the outcome. Then there's the third one, which is the easy button. I want a guide. Mm-hmm. Do everything for me. I want to show up. But like, all of those are different ways of helping someone get to their goal. And I'm proud of it, because I agree with you, man. I was a copier salesperson. I mean, you know how many negative connotations there are about copier salespeople? But like, when I talked about like coming back into the business of it was solution sales, I mean, like, truly, I really like I like unpacking complicated topics and then making them easier for people to digest, so that way they can get to their goals faster. That's it, man. And people should be proud about doing that. I mean, really good salespeople are really hard to find, and like, they should be proud, because they're just educators, and they just happen to have a product or service that are tied to them.
So that's my other word. I replace sales with educator, because I think that a sales this is the way I separated it just for my audience, right? Salespeople are motivated out of they're thinking, what's in it for me, and so they don't actually care whether you need their product or not. They're going to try and sell it to you either way. And that's what people generally
if you're not familiar with that, just go through a timeshare sales pitch.
I went into a timeshare. I've been to multiple of them, and some of them I didn't like. And then I went to one and I was like, you know what? I was actually looking for a timeshare, so I bought it, right? Because I wanted a timeshare at that point. So I'm not against timeshares, but
they happen to be solving a problem for you that you already knew you needed, and you just showed up.
I wanted the solution, right? So understanding that, are they ethical, right? So the sales is when they're doing it just for them, and they don't really care what you need. We're going to design a problem that you didn't know you had, give it to you, make you feel like it's going to end your life unless you buy my product. Okay, that's like what you'd see like a used car salesman, or that type of energy.
Hit you on the head with a hammer and sell you some Advil.
But if you're just like providing a solution, first you have to find out what their solution is, then educate them about their options. And then if they want your help, great. If they don't, you just walk away, right? So then you're like, well, you're still selling me something. Like, yes, I'm writing a contract and we're signing stuff and there's a money transaction. So theoretically, yes, I sold. But I don't feel like I sold anything, because I'm just educating, and then I'm asking you, how do you want to move forward? Mm-hmm. And if you say, I don't, okay, bye, right? Because nobody wants a headache. Nobody wants a client that they felt got pushed into being a client. They don't want that. So anyways, I'm grateful for you sharing that it's really about education. It's really about finding out what their desires are. It's really about listening. And then if you are able to provide a solution to a problem, then help them. And then it's really about communicating, right? Communicating that I have a solution to this problem. They still don't have to choose to accept your solution. And then you say, okay.
Dude, the reason that most people get upset after a sale and have buyer's remorse or whatever it is because the gap between expectations and reality is huge. Mm-hmm. I'm an overpromise and underdelivered versus just explaining how things work.
Yeah. And then if you just explain, and what you said, no features or benefits, but how is it going to help solve the solution? Solve the problem that they're experiencing, then people are going to opt in or opt out. And that's awesome. So the other another highlight of what you said in the beginning is you got to reward yourself as you're hitting your target. So it's funny. I started mowing lawns as well, so that I could get cleats to go play soccer. That was when I was 6 years old, and then I went into a honey extracting plant when I was 13. I never thought of it this way as like my first experiences of financial freedom. I thought of it like I'm really grateful for this talk because not that I was negative about it, but we didn't. I'm the seventh of 11. My parents were pizza drivers, so like there just wasn't a lot of money, and so working was a necessity if I wanted things. And so for a long time, really until just barely, I always thought of that like it was a necessity. I'm grateful for it, but I don't necessarily want everybody to have to experience that. But now with what you just said, I'm thinking, okay, that was my first experience of financial freedom. I got to buy the food I wanted. I got to buy the shoes, no one's telling you what to do. Clothes, anything. Like I didn't rely on my parents. I got MP3 players, same as you, Napster, LimeWire, all that crap. And I got my first cell phone. No other 12-year-old in my family got a cell phone, but I created a situation and said, hey, Mom, I think I need a cell phone. And they said, well, how are you going to get one? Because they're not paying for it. I said, I'll pay for it, prepaid from Walmart, those LG Verizon ones. And I would go
First burner phone. Love it.
I would go down and buy minutes every week as I was spending my minutes. So, I mean, it's just, but those are things that I wanted. And it gave me control of my part. So that financial freedom. But as you guys are listening to this and you're hitting your financial goals or your relationship goals or your family goals, whatever it is, what are you doing to have a tangible representation of that accomplishment? That you actually accomplish something. I think that's a huge principle that often gets overlooked, that people forget to reward their wins because we're taught that doesn't look humble, right? If you go reward your win, then it looks like you're being cocky or prideful or whatever, like recognizing that you did something great. Like, no, you did something great. Like it's okay to celebrate that you did something great. And then on top of that, it also gives you a representation of like, hey, I did this once, I can go do it again. And so I think there's huge need for that going into this. So, so much. So let's go back to talking about your asset and job conversation. Because I'm curious, I know I have my own thoughts about this. Let's say you're working, I'm going to invite you to pull it outside and talk about it in your context, because you know like how things are evaluated. So I want you to use your terminology. But I have a saying that people's biggest liabilities in their life are actually, if used appropriately, their largest assets. So you understand that a balance sheet for a company, and we'll talk about banks, right? At what point does a liability become an asset on a balance sheet? Sorry, what point does a liability become an asset?
Well, it's when two people make commerce together. They're exchanging. Right. So your liabilities are potentially my assets because you bought stuff from me.
Well, right? Sort of. So let's go even. Let's say the company, because you own a company, okay, and you had real estate, cars, trucks, everything to do your job that I'm assuming wasn't paid off.
Okay.
So theoretically, that's a liability, correct?
Well, you have equity in the difference between your assets and your liability.
Okay. And the fact that it's providing income.
Yep.
So then you get to write this off as an asset. So when you go sell your company, yes, you have 6 trucks that are $100,000 in debt on each one. And you also have 6 trucks that are generating income. So then it's like,
this is where there's a whole slew of things, man. Like people, like a business should not be valued based on what it's called book value, the net worth of the business. I think it's the lazy valuation, and it's usually with asset heavy shit, like, stuff that has like a lot of stuff, machinery, equipment. But like, what a shame, man, because the whole point of a business is you have stuff. People, software, machines, processes, procedures, buildings, vehicles, servers, things, patents, whatever it is. That stuff generates cash flow. Mm-hmm. And that cash flow has a risk that we need to apply to it based on how well you organize your stuff. So then we say, okay, well, this cash flow, based on the risk profile of that cash flow, is worth X amount of like a multiple, and that multiple is how many years of cash flow based on the risk someone's willing to give you. So when people only value the balance sheet, it's like a messed up way. Like it's just a job and you can have a balance sheet, but like you have this thing that you have to organize to create cash flow.
So this is exactly why I wanted you to explain it, because you understand this better than I do. Like you're a professional in explaining things in business terms. So you have all your stuff. This is all of your life experiences, your trauma, everything. So this is all your stuff. It's neither good or bad. It's just stuff. It's on a balance sheet. Doesn't matter which side it's on. It's just stuff. And then you have the results of your life, your relationships, your income, everything. That's your quote unquote cash flow. Now, how do you determine in a business? This is a real question. I have no idea the answer. So how do you determine when you say the risk factor applied to that cash flow? What's the process of determining what's a risk factor of that cash flow?
Oh boy. Inside that multiple, it's called the weighted average cost of capital, and it's got two components. It's the cost of equity and the cost of debt, and they blend them together. In the cost of equity, it's this thing called a build-up methodology, which is the risk-free premium, which is like called the treasuries. Then you do equities, which is the stock market. Then you do a size premium, which is like smaller companies. So you're building up risk. So if I had $1 million I wanted to give you, say, well, I need, other than treasuries, I go into the stock market. I need more return because of the risk. Then if I wanted to invest in a privately held company, I need more return because it's not liquid, lack of liquidity, lack of control. So I'm adding the percentages of return that I need. So it's like I think it's like 2.7, 6.9, 5.6. Those are published rates, Sam. Like I didn't make that stuff up. They're published. Then the next one is company specific risk. And it's a huge range. You could have two companies. This is all in our training. You have two companies, Summit and Summit Manufacturing, Jordan Tool and Die, 10 million in revenue, $1 million in EBITDA, both. And EBITDA is just a proxy for cash flow. We don't have to get into that right now.
Right.
Both of them are in manufacturing. Summit goes for twice the value, essentially. Let's call it a 6 multiple, and Jordan Tool and Die goes for 3. Why is that? Summit has an ERP system with good data, clean financials, rockstar management team. Like they've de-risked that company so that sustainable, predictable, transferable cash flow kicks out all the time. Jordan Tool and Die, owner heavily involved. Owners got everything in their brain. Their management team, they just plain English, management team sucks. They've got no ERP system. Their financials are junk. It's just tax returns. Like I can't go buy that company. What am I going to do? I don't trust the story at all. It's like, how do I have any idea whether that cash flow is going to be there next year? So, hey, by the way, Jordan Tool and Die owner, like you have a really, really expensive, high paying, very stressful job because it's completely involved in you versus this over here is a machine that kicks out cash. And if I said to Summit Manufacturing, I want to buy your company, they give me a baton and say, here's the strategic plan. Here's the 3 financial statements tied to the target equity valuation. Here's my executive team. Here's how they get comped. By the way, we run EOS. Here are the KPIs. Here are the 3 statements. Those KPIs are tied to the 3 statements. And we have a budget to actual meeting every single month. We do annual quarterly planning. And by the way, here you go, Sam. Here's the whole Dropbox file. Peace. That's how you get twice the value from your company compared to that.
Right. So this is why I love this, because I studied neuropsychology in college. I didn't study anything like I didn't study business. I got into this through life experiences and it being fascinating to me. But the organization of your stuff and the ability to transfer your stuff to
someone else,
to somebody else matters. And this isn't just business. This is you want to build a rock solid marriage or relationship or friendship with somebody. How well have you organized yourself, your stuff? Everybody's gone through crap, right? I didn't have to know his dad's story. I still don't have to know his dad's story, everything about it, to know that we experience these things. I didn't have to know Ryan's story to know that he's experienced some things, right? We all have the same types of stuff. Maybe it's all different, but it's all the same types of stuff. How we organize it and then transfer that to the next person is the cash flow stream, the energy stream, and the risk of getting involved with somebody who hasn't organized their crap. It's not that you have crap. Having crap is not the problem. In fact, you're better off having crap than no crap, right? You ever meet somebody who's like never experienced anything in their life? They've sat in their basement the whole time and it's like, I don't even know how to interact with you because you have nothing to relate to. So you're better off having crap than no crap. You're better off having a hard life than no life, right? So the stuff is not the problem. The issue is that there's not been an organization process, and having somebody help you organize that, or you figure it out on your own.
It's just being conscious of it all.
Yeah, like be conscious, mind map it out, journal, figure it out, organize it. Then when you're like, hey, I'd like to be in a relationship with you, whether that's romantic, whether that's religious, whether that's business, whatever it is, you take yourself who's been organized and you go say, hey, here are the risk factors of being associated with me. Okay. Is it worth the risk? Here's the things that I can offer. Here's my life experiences. I'm not scared of them. They happen. I learn from them, and this is how I help people with them. Here's the risk factors of being associated with me. I know people who openly share all of their times they went to jail, all of their times they did drugs, everything. Why? Why are they not scared of like openly sharing and becoming a person of influence with having this crappy backstory? Because now they're organized their crappy backstory and they're making it meaningful for somebody and they're monetizing their story. There's other people who went through all the same stuff and they're still doing it because they never sat down and said, let's organize this and see if we can make something of it, right? And sell it and market it. Because all of your experiences were given to you to benefit somebody else. If Ryan and his dad and his family experienced this, sold their company, he went home to his wife, he cried a few days and then said, well, that was fun. Let's go get a job. Okay. Like, what a dang shame that all of that experience didn't turn into helping more people avoid the pain and gain more of the joy in life.
Amen to that.
What a wasted experience of years of his life if he didn't share it and come on this podcast. And the risk factor, who determines the risk factor of being associated with that business or purchasing the business? Is it the person purchasing it, or is it the person trying to sell it?
And I would even argue there's one more, which is the person that decides to keep it every day.
Yeah, which is maybe the same person, right? The person's trying to keep it and sell it at the same time. They are the risk factor. And if you can organize that risk factor, you determine the risk factor of your life. And this is where, like, if you're going out in life and you're experiencing a life that you don't enjoy, you are the risk factor. You don't want to hear it, but it's the truth. You are the risk factor. I think that's a huge takeaway when we're talking about building a legacy. How are you transferring that legacy, and how are you making it easy to pass that baton on?
Well said.
Anyways, this was so good. I want to pick your brain about so much more. It'll get far more technical than most of my audience is used to, but my brothers need to hear this, because I have two brothers who are running companies that need to hear this. I need to hear this, right? My company doesn't get valued the same way that their companies do.
Well, and why this is important, Sam, is like owning a business in America is like or any democracy. I mean, like, is one of the best vehicles to create wealth, enjoy work, and make an impact. I mean, it's truly like a blank canvas.
Yeah. Or the opposite of all of those. And the first thing I wrote down is, if you only have 2 out of those 3, it's just misery. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have an impact and you enjoy it, but you have no money. Well, now you're stressed out because you have no money. Okay. You enjoy the work, but you're broke. Okay. Or maybe you have tons of money and you enjoy it, but you're making no impact. And so then you turn around and you're like, well, why did I do that?
Exactly.
Did I really do that just for the money? That was lame. I don't feel fulfilled at all. Or maybe you have a giant impact and you're making tons of money, but you hate what you do. Okay. There's people like that I know that are like, I'm so
That's
done.
Why I got to live in the intersection of all 3 of those.
Yeah. And so any 2 of those 3 or worse, what if you just had a bunch of money, but you hated what you did and you're making no impact? That would be that would be worse. What if you enjoyed it, but you had no money and you were making no impact? That one, at least you can like be happy in your own bedroom, right? And then maybe you're making an impact, but you have no money and you don't enjoy it. Like and then there's people who have none of these 3. And those are the people that I wish we could help the most. Like,
yep.
You're just existing. Anyways, I am so grateful for this conversation. We need to meet up again when you come back to
I appreciate it, Sam.
Arizona.
Awesome.
I haven't ever been to Minnesota, so I'll have to come in like
There's only like 4 months a year you'd want to come here anyways.
Yeah. Just let me know when the warmest parts of the year are, and that's when I'll come visit you. But Arizona is pretty much always nice. Some people don't like the 4 months that you don't come to Arizona, but I actually like the heat, so it's all good for me. But that's hilarious. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And first, I don't want to move past this. Sorry, I got like lost in this conversation. And so I forgot to ask you all the real questions. But like, let's say somebody wants to work with Ryan. Where do they go? Like, how do they find you? And you talked about your options very eloquently. They're like, I need one of those options, you know? Where do they go to get in touch with you, get started working?
Best place is the website, man. Arkona.io. So it's ARKONA.io. And we've got 325 plus podcasts out there with videos, and we got videos about the training. You could an outline of all of our services. You can book a call. It's all there, man. So they can spend weeks and weeks and weeks consuming content if they wanted to.
Okay. And if they were to interact with you directly on social media or anything like that, where would they go?
LinkedIn is where I'm most active.
Okay. Awesome. LinkedIn's it's getting its second wind, I think. And dude, social media, that's a whole different conversation. I don't care what other people are doing, and I don't think people care about what I'm doing, but all of my team says that we need to be more and more out there. So we're working on it. It's just another avenue of brand recognition. Most people aren't making a lot of money directly from social media. Some people are. Most people are just using it as another brand recognition piece, which it does help, you know. Even that.
But if people reach out on LinkedIn, I message. I'm out there. I post stuff. I'm interactive there.
Yeah. Even that's changed a lot because of the videos. Like, you don't even have to have a big following on social media anymore, and it's more about the engagement and how many views you get. So it's all fascinating. Well, thank you so much, and this will probably be posted right close to the end of the year. So awesome, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, man. Merry Christmas. Appreciate having me on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks a bunch. We'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.